The war between the Velkar Dominion and the Terran Coalition had lasted 7 bloody years. It began, as so many wars did, with arrogance. The Velkar were an ancient warrior species, towering, scaled, bred for conquest and survival on worlds where storms could flay flesh from bone. They believed themselves the pinnacle of martial perfection. Their soldiers fought not for survival, but for the honor of the Dominion. To them, humans were nothing but upstarts, fragile, soft-skinned creatures from a backwater death world. When humanity first reached the stars, the Velkar had laughed. When humanity built fleets and alliances, the Velkar had sneered. And when humanity dared fight back against their expansion, the Velkar swore they would make Earth itself bow. By the 7th year, neither side was winning. The Velkar had numbers, ships, centuries of experience. Humanity had ingenuity, stubbornness, and the unnerving ability to adapt to anything. But it was the Terrans' mercy that the Velkar could not comprehend. When the Dominion captured human prisoners, they were tortured or executed. When humans captured Velkar soldiers, they were treated, fed, and returned through neutral zones. The Velkar saw it as weakness. The humans saw it as civilization. And so the High Council of the Dominion declared one final test to end the war, a duel of champions. No fleets, no armies, just one warrior from each race, to fight to the death before the galaxy's eyes. The Dominion's finest, General Korthar of the Blood Caste, was chosen without question. Korthar was a legend even among his kind. A mountain of muscle and scars, his scales blackened from plasma burns, his claws replaced with alloy after battles too brutal to remember. He had never been defeated. He was not merely a soldier but a living weapon, shaped since birth for one purpose: to conquer. The humans took their time choosing. Their military leaders debated, politicians bickered, and philosophers argued about what such a fight meant. Finally, they chose Captain Elias Ward, a quiet man from a ruined Earth colony, a veteran of 100 small wars, known for his uncanny restraint. Ward was not the strongest or the fastest, but those who knew him said he had something else: an unbreakable calm. When the decision was announced, the Velkar laughed. Korthar himself dismissed the human name with a snarl. "Send your finest killer," he said in the council's hall, his voice echoing like thunder. Not some weakling who hides behind codes and mercy, but the challenge was accepted, and the duel arranged. They met on a neutral world chosen by both sides, a barren moon orbiting a dead star. The air was thin, the ground cracked and dark with old volcanic scars. Around the horizon, ships from every major power in the galaxy formed a silent ring, broadcasting the event live across countless worlds. No one wanted to miss it. At dawn, Korthar descended first, armor gleaming obsidian under the dim sun. His breathing apparatus hissed, each exhale fogging the air. Across the plain, a smaller figure appeared, a human in simple carbon fiber armor, the Terran Coalition's insignia etched faintly on his shoulder. Ward carried no visible weapon. The crowd of ships watching from orbit went quiet. Korthar took a step forward, his claws sinking into the dust. "You bring no blade, human," he rumbled, his voice low, mocking. "Do you plan to reason with me to death?" Ward tilted his head slightly. "Maybe," he said. A ripple of laughter moved through the Velkar frequencies. Even some humans watching felt a chill of embarrassment, but Ward stood calm, his eyes steady. When the signal flare shot into the sky, Korthar moved like an avalanche. He charged, the ground shaking under his weight, his claws carving furrows in the stone. Ward didn't flinch. He waited until the last possible second, then rolled aside with impossible precision. Korthar's strike shattered the earth where he'd been standing. Ward countered with a low movement, a short jab that struck the underside of Korthar's arm, a weak point between plates. The impact made a sound like a hammer hitting metal. Korthar roared, swatting him aside with enough force to break bone, but Ward absorbed the blow, rolling with it, minimizing damage. The Velkar general sneered. "You dodge like prey." Ward smiled faintly. "You fight like a storm." And so it went on. For minutes that felt like hours, Korthar unleashed every technique in the Dominion's history. overhead strikes that could fell trees, lunges that broke stone, clawed swipes meant to eviscerate. Ward dodged, deflected, redirected. He never struck to kill, only to unbalance, to exhaust, to control. The spectators grew restless. The Velkar roared for blood. Even the human officers watching were unsure what Ward was doing. But those who had fought on real battlefields, those who had seen what he'd seen, knew. Ward wasn't trying to win. He was learning. Finally, Korthar caught him with a tail strike, sending him sprawling across the field. The Velkar advanced, triumphant. He pinned the human with one clawed foot and leaned close, hot breath steaming through his mask. "This is your end, fragile one," he hissed. "Your people will remember you as the man who made them kneel." Ward looked up at him, not with fear, but pity. "You don't understand us at all," he said quietly. Then he moved. In one smooth motion, Ward twisted, using Korthar's weight against him. He locked the general's leg and rolled, sending the massive alien crashing to the ground. Before Korthar could react, Ward was already up, pressing his forearm to the warrior's throat. The movement was surgical, efficient, controlled. Korthar struggled, muscles bulging, but Ward didn't press harder. He just held him there. "Yield," Ward said softly. The word hung in the air like a blade. The entire galaxy waited. Korthar's eyes blazed. "Never!" Ward didn't move. "Then stop fighting me!" The Velkar tried to strike again, but the hold tightened. Not to crush, only to contain. "I don't want to kill you," Ward said. "But I will if I have to." It was the tone that broke him. Not rage, not triumph, just quiet certainty. The kind of voice that spoke to something deeper than pride. Korthar's vision blurred as his own breath caught. He could kill this human. He knew it. One twist, one desperate strike. But something in those eyes stopped him. It wasn't fear. It wasn't hate. It was mercy. And mercy, to a Velkar, was unbearable. With a guttural growl, Korthar went still. His claws flexed once, then opened. "I yield," he rasped. The silence that followed was absolute. The Dominion fleets went still. The human command ships didn't cheer. They didn't need to. The broadcast ended with a single image burned into history. The galaxy's mightiest warrior kneeling, beaten not by strength, but by restraint. When Korthar awoke hours later, he was aboard a medical frigate. Human, not Velkar. His wounds had been treated. His armor repaired. The human who had defeated him sat beside the bed, reading quietly from a datapad. "You live," Ward said without looking up. Korthar's voice was rough. "Why?" Ward closed the pad. "Because you stopped fighting." The Velkar turned his head slowly, his eyes burning. "You should have finished it. I was beaten." "You were alive," Ward said simply. That was enough. Korthar couldn't speak. He stared at the human, seeing not weakness but something he couldn't name. An inner power that didn't come from violence. Something terrifying in its peace. The Dominion recalled him days later, broken and silent. The Council expected him to speak of human brutality, of treachery. But when they asked what had happened, Korthar only said, "They fight differently. They win differently. We do not understand them." That was all. But those words spread like fire through the Dominion. For the first time in centuries, the Velkar hesitated before another war. And somewhere, far from the crowds and the cameras, Elias Ward looked out at the stars and wondered if he'd done the right thing. Because sometimes, mercy is heavier to carry than victory. The story of that duel would not end there. It would twist and turn across the years, shaping both their worlds. Because though Korthar had been spared, what was broken inside him would not easily mend. He had faced humanity's mercy, and it had left scars no weapon ever could. When General Korthar returned to the Velkar Dominion, there were no songs of victory waiting for him. The council chamber, once filled with roaring chants of his name, was silent as he entered. The air was heavy with the scent of iron and smoke, the faint hum of plasma torches echoing from somewhere deep below. The great banners of conquest, those crimson tapestries embroidered with the blood of past foes, hung limp. For the first time in his long life, Korthar walked among his people as something less than what he had been. The High Consul, an elder named Vorakten, rose from his throne. His scales were a dull silver, his body hunched, but his eyes sharp as a predator's. "Korthar of the Blood Caste," he said, voice amplified through the chamber's resonators. "You left as our sword. You return as what?" Korthar dropped to one knee, his gaze low. "I return as one who has seen truth, my consul." A murmur rippled through the gathered castes. The warriors whispered. The priests hissed. Vorakten's eyes narrowed. Truth? What truth could justify defeat before the galaxy? Korthar looked up, his voice steady though it burned to speak. That the humans do not fight as we do. That they are not weak. They are something we cannot break, because they do not fear death as we do. They forgive it. The chamber erupted in growls and disbelief. The idea of mercy as strength was heresy. One of the blood priests, his robes shimmering like molten gold, slammed his staff against the floor. "You shame the Dominion with such weakness. Forgive? Our creed is domination. Our law is victory. You let a lesser creature make you kneel." Korthar stood slowly, his massive frame casting long shadows. "He did not make me kneel," he said. "He gave me a choice." The room went still. Vorakten studied him with something unreadable in his eyes. "And you chose to yield?" "I chose to live," Korthar replied quietly. The consul's expression hardened. "Then live you shall, but not among us." The decision came swiftly. The Dominion could not execute their greatest warrior. It would show fear. But they could erase him. Korthar was stripped of rank, his name struck from the warrior registries, his armor placed in the Hall of Shame, where relics of defeat were sealed for eternity. He was exiled to the outer colonies, a forgotten shadow on a mining world where soldiers were sent to die slowly among dust and heat. The announcement spread like wildfire. Across the Dominion, some whispered that the great Korthar had lost his mind, bewitched by the Terran's strange philosophies. Others said he had been broken in spirit by human trickery. A few, though very few, wondered if perhaps there was wisdom in what he said. In the months that followed, Korthar worked in silence. The mines of Yarrick 9 were deep and cruel, veins of molten ore winding through the planet's crust. The air was hot and thick, filled with the stench of acid and sweat. Each day he carried drills and plasma cutters, his claws blackened with soot. Each night he lay under the faint shimmer of the stars, remembering that barren moon where a human had looked at him, not with hatred, but compassion. He could not forget those eyes, calm, unflinching, almost sorrowful. The memory haunted him, though he did not understand why. He had faced warriors far stronger, far more skilled. He had killed champions of entire races. Yet this single human, who had spared him instead of destroying him, had carved something open inside him. For a Velkar warrior, mercy was an alien wound. Weeks turned into months. The miners came to respect him, even fear him, though he spoke little. When fights broke out in the pits, inevitable among those exiled to die, Korthar would end them with a glance. He was a ghost among the condemned, a legend buried in dust, but the Dominion above him was changing. The defeat in the duel had shaken their pride more than anyone dared admit. For the first time in centuries, border skirmishes slowed, trade routes reopened, and whispers spread that perhaps humanity was not to be underestimated. The High Council ignored these murmurs, but they festered in the ranks. Soldiers began asking questions their leaders could not answer. One night, as Korthar sat by a dying fire at the mouth of the mine, he heard a soft voice behind him. "You are not as they say." He turned sharply. A small figure stood there, a Velkar female draped in the pale robes of the healer caste. Her scales shimmered faintly blue under the firelight. She carried a small satchel and a datapad, her posture respectful but unafraid. "I know you," Korthar said gruffly. "The Council's medic. You tended the warriors of the Blood Caste once." She nodded. "I was ordered here to tend to the miners, but truthfully I came to see you." "Why?" She met his gaze without flinching. "Because you are the only one who has faced a human and lived. I wanted to know why you didn't kill him when you had the chance." Korthar looked away. The fire crackled between them. "Because he did not fight to kill me. He fought to stop me." She tilted her head. "There's no difference." There is, Korthar said. When you fight to kill, you destroy what you hate. When you fight to stop, you preserve what you value. He saw me not as prey, but as something worth sparing. The healer was silent for a long time. And that broke you? Korthar's jaw tightened. It broke everything I was taught to believe. For days after, she returned, asking questions no warrior had ever asked him. About humanity, about mercy, about what it meant to yield. Korthar found himself answering, even when he didn't want to. He told her about Ward's eyes, steady and calm, even in victory. About his words. You don't understand us at all. And slowly, he began to wonder if perhaps the human had been right. Then came the summons. One night, as he worked in the mines, a Dominion gunship descended through the clouds. The overseers barked orders. Korthar was pulled from the pits and brought before a holographic projection of the High Consul himself. You are needed again, Vorakten said, his tone like sharpened steel. The humans have begun settlement beyond the Accord line. Our fleets prepare to remind them of their limits. You will lead the first strike. Korthar's heart froze. You would have me return to war? You are still Velkar, the consul said coldly, and your debt to the Dominion remains unpaid. Korthar clenched his claws. You banished me, stripped me of name and honor, and now we restore them if you obey, Vorakten said. Prove your loyalty. Bring us victory, or remain forgotten. The transmission ended. The silence that followed was heavier than the air in the mines. He could feel the stares of the workers around him. Some watched with envy, others with pity. The healer stood at the edge of the shadows, her eyes searching his face. You won't go, she said quietly. He said nothing. You saw what they are, she continued. What they can be. If you go, you'll kill that truth. Korthar rose slowly. You do not understand. A Velkar's choice is never free. She stepped closer. Then make it free. Her words followed him long after she left. That night, Korthar sat alone on the ridge overlooking the smoldering pits. He thought of the human again, of Ward's calm voice, of how he had offered mercy instead of death. You always have a choice, the human had said, though Korthar hadn't believed it then. Now he wasn't so sure. The next morning, when the transport came to retrieve him, Korthar boarded it without a word. But as the ship lifted off the barren world, a strange stillness settled over him. It wasn't the fire of vengeance or the pride of restored command. It was something quieter. Perhaps it was doubt. When he reached the Dominion flagship, the soldiers saluted him in awe. General Korthar returns, they cried, but he didn't answer. His armor gleamed once more, newly forged, his insignia restored. Yet beneath the metal, something was gone. He walked through the halls that had once echoed his name and felt nothing. The banners, the glory, the oaths, all of it felt hollow. That night, he stood on the observation deck, staring at the stars. Somewhere out there was the human who had defeated him. Somewhere, Elias Ward was still alive. Korthar closed his eyes. You said mercy was strength, he whispered. Let us see if I am strong enough to keep it. He knew what the Dominion expected. Swift conquest, no prisoners. But in his heart, he knew he couldn't fight the same way again. And so, as the fleet prepared to burn across the stars, Korthar made his decision, not as a general, not as a warrior, but as something new. When he struck next, it would not be with claws or plasma fire. It would be with the one weapon the Dominion feared most. Mercy. The Velkar fleet advanced across the void like a wall of black fire. 30 warships, their hulls gleaming with fresh alloy and engraved with symbols of conquest, moved toward the border of Terran space. From the bridge of the flagship Vengeance of Yarok, General Korthar stood in silence as the stars stretched into lines around him. The hum of the engines pulsed through his bones, rhythmic, alive, like the heartbeat of a predator. He had stood here before, on the eve of dozens of wars. Yet this time, the air felt different. The silence pressed against him. The faces of his crew, all proud warriors of the blood caste, watched him with fierce devotion, unaware that their commander's heart was at war with itself. The fleet's mission was clear. Breach Terran-held Sector 9 Kappa. capture its outposts, and secure the mineral-rich world of Eidos IV. No prisoners, no negotiations. Total victory. It should have stirred his blood, ignited that primal hunger for battle that had defined his entire life. But instead, all Korthar could think of was that quiet human voice saying, "You don't understand us at all." On the main display, the image of High Consul Vorakten appeared, transmitted from the Dominion homeworld. The old warrior's scales shimmered faintly under the golden light of his throne room. "General Korthar," he said, voice deep and solemn, "you have been given redemption. Bring us Eidos IV, and the Dominion will forget your disgrace. Fail, and not even your bones will be remembered." Korthar bowed his head slightly. "The fleet will proceed as ordered, Consul." Vorakten's eyes gleamed. "Good. And General, this time, no mercy." The transmission cut. Korthar turned to his officers. "Plot hyperspace jump to Eidos IV," he commanded. "Engage stealth protocol upon arrival. I want no detection until we strike." The officers obeyed immediately. To them he was still the same unstoppable figure, the hero of the Dominion's greatest wars. None suspected that something deep within him had begun to fracture. Hours passed. The stars bled back into view as the fleet dropped out of hyperspace. Before them floated Eidos IV, a small world cloaked in green oceans and swirling clouds, dotted with orbital rings and human stations. It looked fragile, peaceful. To Korthar's eyes, it was beautiful in a way he could never explain. "Target lock acquired," said his weapons officer. "Awaiting orders, General." Korthar stared at the planet. In the hum of the command deck, he could hear his heartbeat, slow and heavy. His claws flexed against the rail. Every instinct screamed to strike, to show strength. But another voice whispered within. The echo of that duel. That moment when a human had spared his life instead of ending it. He remembered the look in Ward's eyes. Calm, almost sorrowful. Not pity, not superiority, something else. He opened his mouth to give the order and stopped. "Hold fire," he said quietly. The bridge fell silent. His officers exchanged uneasy glances. "General?" "Repeat," he said louder. "Hold fire. Bring us into low orbit. I want visuals on all Terran installations." The helmsman hesitated, then obeyed. The vengeance of Yarek descended into the planet's upper orbit, scanners lighting up with readings. Dozens of human structures dotted the surface. Research domes, mining outposts, small civilian settlements. "They are unarmed," reported the sensor chief. "Minimal defense grid. A single orbital patrol craft. This will be no battle, General. It will be a slaughter." Korthar's jaw clenched. "And yet they live here without fear." The words slipped out before he could stop them. "What was that, sir?" "Nothing," he said. "Prepare boarding units." Within hours, Velkar dropships descended through the atmosphere, black streaks cutting across the morning sky. Terran alarms wailed below as soldiers scrambled into defensive lines. But when the first dropship landed, its hatch didn't open with blaster fire. Korthar stepped out alone. The humans aimed their rifles instantly. Dust swirled around him. He raised no weapon. "I am Korthar of the Velkar Dominion," he called out, his voice like thunder rolling across the plain. "I seek your commander." The soldiers exchanged confused glances. Then a tall man emerged from the human line wearing a captain's insignia. His face was weathered, eyes cautious but steady. "Captain Rains, Terran Coalition Defense," he said. "You're trespassing, Velkar." Korthar inclined his head. "I know. I come not to conquer, but to speak." Rains frowned. "To speak?" The Velkar general spread his clawed hands, a gesture that felt strange even to him. "Your people and mine have bled enough. The Dominion prepares for another war, but I tell you this, I will not start it." The human soldiers stiffened. Rains studied him closely, then said, "You're here alone. That's not standard Dominion practice." Korthar's golden eyes flicked toward the horizon, where the other Velkar ships still circled above like silent predators. "They wait for my command, but I have not given it." Rains hesitated, then lowered his weapon slightly. "Why?" Korthar's gaze met his. "Because a human once taught me what it means to be strong. And it is not this." For a long moment no one spoke. The tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. Then, slowly, Rains holstered his weapon. "You're serious?" "I am." "Then you'd better come with me, before your friends up there decide otherwise." They brought him inside the command center, a crude structure built from Terran alloy and sandcrete. Screens flickered with images of the Velkar ships overhead. Human officers argued in hushed tones. Korthar could feel the fear in the air, but also something else: curiosity. "You understand?" Rains said as they entered the comms room. "If this is some kind of trick, my men will shoot you before you take another breath." "I understand," Korthar said. He looked around the room. The faces were human, fragile, soft-skinned, yet every pair of eyes was alert and unbroken. These were not prey. These were survivors. "You could end this," Rains said carefully, "if you turn your fleet away." "I can try," Korthar said. "But they will not follow unless they see something greater than fear." Rains folded his arms. "And what's greater than fear to a warrior species?" Korthar's answer came softly. "Mercy!" Before Rains could respond, alarms blared. "Incoming transmission!" shouted one of the technicians. "It's from the Dominion flagship." The screen flickered to life. High Consul Vorak Ten's face filled the room, his expression dark with fury. "General Korthar," he thundered, "why have you delayed the assault?" Korthar straightened. "Because there is no need for one." Vorakten's eyes narrowed. "You dare defy direct command? You speak to me from among the enemy like one of their pets?" Korthar's claws flexed, but his voice remained steady. "If the Dominion wishes to conquer the stars, then let it conquer itself first. We are dying by our own pride." The consul's hiss was audible even through the static. "You are no longer Velkar," he snarled. "You are human filth in borrowed skin." The transmission cut abruptly. Moments later, the orbital alarms screamed again. "Dominion ships are powering weapons," cried a technician. "They're targeting us and their own troops on the surface." Korthar's heart sank. He had expected this. Vorakten would rather erase his betrayal than face it. "Evacuate your civilians," Korthar said to Rains. "Now!" Rains glared. "And what about you?" "I will end this," Korthar said simply. He stepped outside, into the rising wind. The Velkar dropships were lifting, trying to retreat before the flagship's bombardment began. Korthar activated his comlink, opening a direct channel to the vengeance of Yarak. "This is General Korthar," he said, voice booming through every Velkar frequency. "By the code of the blood caste, I assume command." His officers' shocked replies flooded the channel. "Sir, the consul has revoked—" "I assume command," Korthar roared, his tone shattering hesitation. "Cease fire! All ships hold position." There was chaos across the comms, shouted protests, confusion, panic. Then a voice broke through, trembling but resolute. "General, is it true? You stand with them?" Korthar took a deep breath. "I stand for what we could become. If that makes me your enemy, then so be it." Above, the first energy bolts lit the sky, streaks of white fire descending. The ground shook. The humans scrambled for cover, and then suddenly, the bombardment stopped. Silence. Rains looked up, blinking. "What happened?" Korthar stared skyward, his throat tight. One by one, the smaller Dominion ships powered down their weapons. Then, incredibly, they began turning away, engines flaring as they broke formation. The flagship remained, its cannons still charged, but the fleet itself was fracturing. "They're disobeying orders," Korthar murmured. The vengeance of Yarak fired a single warning shot into the void, then transmitted across open channels. "General Korthar, your treason will not go unpunished." He stared up at the warship that had once carried his name into glory. "Then let it be punished," he whispered. The ship's main gun glowed with rising energy. The humans shouted warnings, but Korthar didn't move. He stood there unmoving as light filled the heavens. But before the shot came, another explosion ripped through the sky. One of the Velkar cruisers, his old second-in-command ship, had turned and fired directly at the flagship. In seconds, half the fleet was in mutiny, their formation collapsing into chaos. The Dominion's warlord had been undone not by defeat, but by a single act of mercy that had rippled through one warrior's soul until it reached an entire fleet. When the smoke cleared, the flagship was gone. The surviving Velkar ships fled into deep space. Korthar fell to one knee, his strength finally giving out. The human captain approached, stunned. "You just saved us," he said. Korthar's golden eyes flickered open. "No," he murmured. "I just remembered what he taught me." The sky above shimmered with burning debris, fragments of pride, hatred, and fear dissolving into light. And for the first time in his life, Korthar felt something he had never known before. Peace. The Dominion burned with rage. Across its vast territories, from the crimson moons of Vardus to the stormlit citadels of Trask, the name Korthar became synonymous with betrayal. The propaganda screens blared with his image, declared heretic, oathbreaker, enemy of the Velkar bloodline. Soldiers were told to spit upon his name, to teach their hatchlings that mercy was weakness, that hesitation was death. But among the veterans, among those who had seen too much blood spilled across too many worlds, whispers began to stir. Some said Korthar had seen truth beyond pride. Others said he had simply gone mad. Korthar himself did not hide. He remained on Eidos 4, overseeing the slow rebuilding of what had been almost destroyed. The humans didn't know what to make of him. To most, he was a terrifying figure. Towering, armored, with eyes that glowed faintly gold even in shadow. Yet he worked beside them in silence, helping to lift wreckage, repair generators, and rebuild the outer colony domes. The Terran command didn't fully trust him, but neither did they drive him away. They were practical people. He had saved them. And that, in the harsh arithmetic of frontier life, was worth more than politics. Captain Rains visited him often. At first their talks were cautious, full of pauses and unspoken questions. But over the weeks, something like mutual respect grew between them. They would sit at dusk near the edge of the mining ridge, looking at the double suns sinking below the horizon. "You could have run," Rains said one evening, his voice low over the crackling campfire. "You could have taken a ship and disappeared into the void." Korthar stared into the flames. "I have been running my entire life," he said. "From weakness, from doubt, from anything that made me feel less than a warrior. I thought mercy was a scar. Now I see it is the mark of something greater. I will not run from it again." Rains studied him for a while. "You know your people will come for you. They'll send more than one ship next time." "I know," Korthar said quietly, "and I will face them." For a time, peace settled over Eidos 4. The Dominion didn't strike immediately, too fractured, too shamed by the failed assault. But deep within the Velkar homeworld, the High Consul gathered a council of warlords. He stood before them, fury in his ancient eyes. "Korthar's treachery is an infection," he said. "If left unchecked, it will spread through the ranks. We must cut it out completely," the council murmured in agreement. One voice, colder than the rest, rose from the shadows. "Then send me!" The room fell silent as General Serath stepped forward. She was younger than Korthar, smaller in stature, but her reputation was carved in fear. She had once served under him years ago, and had surpassed even his record of victories. Her loyalty to the old codes was absolute. Vorakten regarded her with satisfaction. "You were his protégé once. You know his mind." Sarath's mandibles clicked softly. "I know his weakness," she said. "He has forgotten what it means to be Velkar. I will remind him." She was given a fleet twice the size of Korthar's former command. Her orders were simple. Destroy Eidos 4, capture or kill Korthar, and leave no trace of human resistance. When the Dominion fleet emerged from hyperspace weeks later, their arrival lit the sky of Eidos 4, like dawn made of fire. The human colony alarms wailed again, but this time there was no panic. They had rebuilt, fortified, and prepared. Rains and his soldiers scrambled into position while civilians fled to underground shelters. In the middle of it all, Korthar stood motionless, gazing up at the warships descending through the clouds. He recognized the fleet's insignia, the sigil of the bloodline Serath. He had trained her himself. When the first hail came through, her voice was like a blade of ice. "General Korthar, Or should I say, exile? He closed his eyes. Sarath, I am here to finish what you started when you betrayed us, she said. You will surrender now, and I will make your death quick. There is no surrender, Korthar said. Only choice. And I have made mine. Her laughter was sharp and hollow. You sound like one of them. Perhaps I am, he said softly. Sarath's voice hardened. Then you will die like one. The transmission cut. Seconds later, the sky erupted with light as the first orbital bombardment began. Energy blasts tore through the atmosphere, slamming into the outer ridges. The ground shook. Shockwaves rippled across the plains. Korthar roared orders to the humans, his voice carrying through the chaos. Shields up! Reinforce the northern line. Do not meet their drop troops in open terrain. The human defenses were outmatched by Dominion power, but their discipline and Korthar's command kept them alive longer than anyone expected. His deep voice cut through panic like steel through fog. Where the Velkar fought with fury, the humans fought with coordination, each squad moving with precision, covering each other's flanks. As the battle raged, Sarath herself descended in a command craft, flanked by her elite guard. She stepped onto the scarred surface of Eidos IV, her armor black and crimson, her twin blades glowing with plasma. Her eyes gleamed like shards of gold. She moved through the chaos with purpose, cutting down human soldiers who dared to stand in her way. When she finally saw him, tall, scarred, standing among smoke and fire, she stopped. You taught me everything I know, she said, voice calm even as the air burned around them. Now I will unlearn your weakness. Korthar looked at her and felt an ache he hadn't known he could feel anymore. You were the finest of us, he said. You could have led our people into something greater, she sneered. You mean softness? Compromise? No, Korthar. The Dominion endures because we do not bend. You forgot that. He raised no weapon. Strength without restraint is destruction, Sarath. I see it now. You will see it too, if you live long enough. Then let us see whose truth survives, she said, and lunged. Their clash was thunder and flame. Her twin blades met his single-energy axe, sparks showering the ground. She was fast, relentless, every movement honed by the lessons he had once drilled into her. He fought defensively, parrying her strikes, refusing to deliver killing blows. Fight me, she screamed. Show me the monster who won the War of Ashes. That monster died when he met a human, he growled. She struck harder, fueled by rage. One of her blades sliced across his shoulder, sending molten fragments of armor flying. He staggered back, blood dark against his chest plate. You've grown weak, she spat. Perhaps, he said, voice low. But if mercy is weakness, then I choose it. She drove forward again, but he sidestepped, catching her strike and locking their weapons. The ground trembled under their combined strength. Tell me, he asked through gritted teeth, what have all our wars given us? Honor? Power? Or emptiness? Her jaws clenched. Glory, she hissed. Glory dies, he said, twisting her wrist and throwing her backward. But mercy endures. For a heartbeat she hesitated, caught between fury and confusion. In that instant, the battle around them shifted. The humans pushed forward, coordinated artillery fire forcing the Dominion troops to retreat. Korthar could see her soldiers faltering, some even pulling back in uncertainty. Your warriors see it, he said softly. They feel what I felt. They know this fight serves nothing, she roared and charged again. But this time, when he disarmed her, he didn't strike the killing blow. He simply stood there, axe lowered. Do it, she hissed. End it. No, he said. I will not make you my proof. You must choose what kind of Velkar you wish to be. She stared at him, trembling, not from fear, but from the unbearable weight of what she saw in his eyes. Behind her, one of her officers approached, confusion and anger in his voice. Commander, our ships are losing formation. Orders? She didn't answer. Korthar looked up. The battle in orbit had become chaos. Some Dominion captains refused to fire. Others targeted their own allies who continued the assault. Just as before, cracks spread through the chain of command. Look at them, he said quietly. They are starting to see. Her breathing quickened. You've poisoned them with doubt." "I have given them truth," he said. "The same truth that freed me." She screamed in fury and lunged again, but this time her strike was clumsy, desperate. He caught her by the wrist, turned, and sent her crashing to the ground. She lay there gasping, staring up at him. "You should have killed me," she whispered. He looked down at her, his expression weary, ancient. "I did. Long ago, when I chose to be more than a weapon." He turned and walked away, leaving her kneeling in the dust. Around them the Dominion troops began to retreat. Within hours, the surviving Velkar ships fled into hyperspace, leaderless. The humans cheered, but their victory cries were muted by exhaustion and disbelief. As the sun rose over the battered plains, Rains approached Korthar. His armor was cracked, his wounds deep, but he stood tall. "She'll be back," Rains said. "Perhaps," Korthar replied, "but something has changed in her eyes. Even if she doesn't understand it yet," Rains sighed. "You've started something you can't control." Korthar looked toward the horizon, where the last smoke trails faded into the dawn. "I never wanted control," he said. "Only hope." That night, as Eidos Fu's twin moons rose, he sat alone outside the human camp, looking at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Dominion raged, preparing for vengeance. He knew it would not end here. But he also knew that for every Serath who returned to the old ways, there would be others who had seen what he had seen, that mercy could break even the mightiest chain. And though he was branded traitor, exile and enemy, Korthar finally understood what the human had tried to teach him long ago. Mercy was not surrender. It was defiance, the most dangerous kind of defiance. And as he watched the stars burn above him, he whispered into the wind, "Let them come." Months passed, and the galaxy did not forget the Battle of Eidos IV. The humans called it the Miracle Stand. The Dominion called it the Day of Shame. Across the stars, stories spread like wildfire. How a Velkar general had turned on his own people to defend a human colony. How he had defeated the Dominion's most ruthless warlord without spilling her blood. And how mercy had broken the unbreakable. It was a legend that frightened the rulers and inspired the soldiers. On outlying worlds, warriors began to question their orders. A few even defected, claiming they sought the path of Korthar. To the Dominion High Council, this was blasphemy beyond endurance. The old consul Vorakten, his body decaying but his rage still fierce, convened a secret assembly. The chamber was sealed by command codes older than memory. "He is not just a traitor," Vorakten growled, his voice reverberating through the hall. "He is a contagion. Every breath he takes spreads weakness. Every word he speaks erodes our empire. He must die and be unmade in history." A shadow stirred at the edge of the light. It was Serath. Her armor was scorched, one eye scarred shut. Her movements slower now, but her presence unbroken. "You tried to kill him once," Vorakten said sharply. "And you failed." She bowed her head. "Because I thought I knew him," she said quietly. "I no longer do, but I will learn. And when I find him again, I will not hesitate." The council authorized her with absolute command. All Dominion fleets in her path were hers to use. No mercy, no survivors. Meanwhile, on Eidos IV, peace had become uneasy. The humans rebuilt stronger defenses, but they could feel the storm coming. Korthar worked alongside them as if he belonged there, repairing reactor towers, lifting support beams, hunting in the wastelands with the soldiers. Yet inside him, a growing ache gnawed at every quiet hour. He knew what awaited beyond the stars. He could almost feel Serath's shadow moving closer. Captain Rains noticed it too. One night, under the pale twin moons, he found Korthar standing on the ridge overlooking the settlement, staring at the sky. "You know they're coming," Rains said. Korthar nodded slowly. "Yes, she is not one to let ghosts rest." Rains stepped beside him. "We'll stand with you." "You've earned that." Korthar's golden eyes softened. "No, this is not your war anymore. It is mine." Rains shook his head. "The moment you fought for us, it became ours too." The silence between them was long and heavy, filled with things neither could say. When dawn came, the sky tore open again. not with the brilliance of invasion, but the burning red of 1,000 warships descending in perfect formation. The Dominion had come, not in anger, but in judgment. Sarath's voice thundered across the colony through every communicator, every frequency. "Korthar of the Bloodcast," she declared, "by order of the Dominion, you are condemned. Come forward and face your fate. Do not make these humans die for your sins." Korthar stepped into the open, his massive frame visible to all. The soldiers tried to stop him, but he raised a hand. "Enough," he said quietly. "This is how it must be." He walked alone across the barren plain as the Dominion troops descended. Dust swirled around his feet. Hundreds of soldiers surrounded him in a ring of steel and flame. At the center, Sarath stood waiting. Her armor gleamed anew, black and crimson, trimmed with gold, like a wound reborn. "You could have hidden forever," she said as he approached. "They would have worshipped you, those fragile creatures. You could have been a god among them." "I've seen gods," Korthar said. "They bleed like everyone else." Her jaw tightened. "Then bleed again." He did not raise a weapon. "I will not fight you." Her blade ignited with a scream of plasma. "You will," she struck. But this time the duel was not like before. Korthar parried once, twice, and then stepped back, refusing to counter. Her fury was pure, unrelenting. Sparks danced around them as she slashed, thrust, spun, each movement faster than the last. Still, he did not attack. "Fight me!" she roared. "Fight me or die!" "No," he said simply. She struck again, harder, her blade grazing his side, burning deep. He didn't flinch. She slashed across his chest, drawing blood that hissed on the ground. Still, he did not raise his axe. The Dominion soldiers watched in silence. Finally, she stopped, panting, her weapon trembling in her hands. "Why?" she hissed. "Why won't you fight?" "Because if I kill you," he said, "the Dominion will learn nothing. And if you kill me, perhaps they will finally see what you've become." She froze, shaking with rage, and something else. Fear. Behind her, a young Dominion soldier broke rank. "Commander," he said hesitantly, This is not a battle. This is an execution." She turned sharply, eyes blazing. "Silence!" But more soldiers were murmuring now. The words spread like cracks in glass. Execution. Dishonor. Cowardice. Korthar's voice rose, low and calm but powerful enough to reach them all. "You call me weak because I spared an enemy. Yet what strength is there in slaughtering those who can no longer resist? You call yourselves proud, but pride without wisdom is decay. You fear mercy because it shows you what you lack, the courage to choose restraint." Every word landed like a hammer. The air shimmered with tension. The Dominion's discipline faltered. Sarath's jaw quivered. "You've poisoned them again," she whispered. "No," he said softly. "I've freed them." She screamed and lunged once more, her blade aimed for his heart. But before it struck, another weapon intercepted it. A Dominion captain, one of her own lieutenants, blocking her blow. "Enough," the captain shouted. "This is not our way anymore." Sarath staggered back, disbelief in her eyes. "Traitor!" The ranks behind her rippled with confusion. Some soldiers lowered their weapons. Others shouted for order. The structure of command began to crumble under the weight of uncertainty. Korthar looked around, his expression one of sorrow and resolve. "Do you see now?" he said. "Even your warriors are weary of endless blood." Sarath trembled, her composure breaking. "You turned them against me. Against the Dominion." He shook his head. "I only held up a mirror." She roared and swung again, but her strike lacked strength. He caught her wrist, twisted, and sent her weapon spinning into the dirt. Then he stepped closer, placing one hand against her armored chest. "You were my finest student," he said softly. "I wish I could have taught you what I learned too late." For a heartbeat their eyes met, hers burning with pride, his heavy with grief. Then she fell to her knees. Around them, silence spread through the Dominion ranks. The soldiers looked between them, unsure whether to fight or bow. And then slowly, hesitantly, one warrior knelt. Then another, and another. Within moments, 1,000 knees touched the dust. The galaxy's greatest army, the terror of 100 worlds, bowed before a single exile who had refused to fight. Sarath stared at them in horror. "No," she whispered. "Stand! You are Velkar! You—" Her words faltered. She could not finish. Something inside her cracked. Vorak-10, watching from orbit, screamed in fury as his fleet commanders began transmitting ceasefire codes, refusing to continue the bombardment. Some ships powered down their weapons entirely. Others simply drifted. The Dominion, the mighty, unyielding Dominion, had broken itself upon a single act of mercy. Korthar turned away from Sarath, his voice carrying across the plain. "Go home," he said. "Tell them the war is over. Tell them strength without mercy is only fear wearing armor." No one moved. Then, slowly, the Dominion soldiers began to rise, not as conquerors, not as rebels, but as something new. Some saluted him. Some simply walked away, leaving their banners in the dust. Rains and the human soldiers watched in stunned silence from the ridge. When it was over, he approached, disbelief on his face. "You didn't just win," he said. "You changed them." Korthar's shoulders sagged. "No," he said quietly. "I only reminded them what they could be." Sarath remained kneeling long after the others were gone. When she finally looked up, tears of molten gold streaked her face. "What now?" she asked brokenly. Korthar looked toward the horizon, where dawn was rising again. "Now," he said, "we rebuild." In the months that followed, word of the Dominion's fall spread like a tidal wave. Worlds once enslaved found peace. Treaties were signed not out of fear, but understanding. Korthar refused titles or command. He remained on Eidos IV, living among the humans, teaching those who came to learn the strange art of restraint. He became a myth to some, a prophet to others, but to himself, he was only a soldier who had learned that the hardest battle to win was within. Years later, when he finally laid down his armor for the last time, Rains stood beside him once more. "They'll remember you forever," Rains said softly. Korthar smiled faintly. "Then let them remember mercy too." He looked at the stars one final time, the firelight reflecting in his golden eyes. "The galaxy's greatest predator," he whispered, "was never the Velkar, nor the human. It was pride. And pride, at last, has bowed." And with that, Korthar, warrior, exile, redeemer, walked into the light of a new dawn, leaving behind a universe forever changed by a single act of mercy.